And I do have I mentioned, I do have several books. These are my last remaining books that I have. I'm selling them at discount rates at $5 each. The Haunted House book is especially popular now in October for some reason. So anyways. Just recently, some of you who still get the Courier Journal, especially the print edition of the Courier Journal, they hired me this summer to write a series of about 20 articles on Louisville history. And some of the most recent ones that I did was on pop concerts in Louisville and on major fires in Louisville history. Some of you may have seen that. I don't know if you still get the CJ or not, but anyways, that was a fun exercise, and I'm not doing them now, but they may hire me again for next year, they were saying. So we'll see how that goes. So here we are, Louisville then and now. And by the way, if you can't hear, let me know. Sometimes I tend to drift with the microphone here. So there's Louisville then. There it is now. Kind of changed a little bit. What do you think? Okay. So of course we had the canal, and there it is today. A little bit different. And Louisville has always been a logistics hub. Of course, we had the steamboats back in the early 1800s, mid-1800s. Then the L&N Railroad came in the mid-1800s. And now then we got UPS here. The Idlewild, when it was launched in 1914. The Avalon, 1948. And our beautiful Belle of Louisville now from 1962 on. The waterfront, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Hopefully some of you may remember what that looked like. That's what it looks like today. I'll go back and forth. A little bit of a change, I would say. Here's another view of it. There it is today. And I remember this distinctly. I remember mid-1980s, David Karam, who was the then CEO of the Waterfront Development Corporation, he was a staff of one, and me and Bill Whalen, who I think is a member here at Holy Trinity, me and him went up and knocked on David Karam's door and said, we're from the architectural community, we're here to help you, which we did, and we helped them transform into what this is today. So I've been a part of that process for almost the last 40 years, and one of the great achievements there that we were able to do. The Big Four Bridge, hopefully you all walked that. Me and my wife were on it last night. We love it. Of course, you may remember when it looked like this, WLRS.
Yeah.
This is Louisville in 1968. Everything in yellow there has been demolished. So yeah, we kind of wiped out downtown. I wrote an article, one of my Courier Journal articles was on urban renewal, or urban removal as we preservationists called it. And I wrote an article about how all that happened. Here is a West Main Street in the 1860s. That's the old Louisville Hotel there. If you keep an eye on that building right there, there it is there. That's in the 1920s. And that's what it looks like today, West Main Street.
Still there.
So here is Jefferson Street looking west from 5th. That's what it looks like today. So we'll go back and forth. Not quite the same. On the right side, it's still the same. The left side's a little changed. Here we go. This is corner of Jefferson and 6th Street. The church in the distance there, that's Christ Church Cathedral there on 2nd Street. There is Christ Church Cathedral then. That was back in the 70s and 80s and possibly the 90s. City Blueprint for us architects. Used to use the Blueprint company there. Now it's called the Love Boutique. Hopefully none of you have been there. Here is a view of 4th Street looking north from Jefferson Street. So this is all the same view. Each of these photographs is somewhat different, but they're all looking the same way. And if you look at that building there, that's the old Lincoln or Washington building. It had two different names, Lincoln and Washington, but that's the same view. That's what that same view today. Kind of changed a bit. This is 4th Street looking north from Jefferson. That's that Lincoln, Washington building that I was just referencing there, the tall building. And that's that same view today. And there is that Lincoln building, also called the Washington building. Very beautiful, ornate high-rise, isn't it? There's the base of it. Look how beautiful that was. This was back in about early 1970s. That's what replaced it. So we went from that to that. I called that probably the worst building in Louisville at the time. Fortunately, that has since been replaced. They took down the facade of it. It's now the Derby City Casino downtown. There it is there. Hopefully none of you have been there either. So here's the Atherton building at 4th and Walnut, which of course is now Muhammad Ali. And they replaced that with this high-rise glass structure. So there it is. That's what they did. There was another Atherton building at 4th and Chestnut. And it's still there, believe it or not, but you would never recognize it. It looks like that now. Yeah. Back and forth on that. Oh, this is really painful here. This is the corner of 4th and Chestnut, back in the 1930s or so. They replaced it with that. So we went from that view to that view. Now it looks like this, so that drugstore and parking garage is still there. I'll go back and show it to you one last time. So we went from that to that. So that ornate building that was on the corner of 4th and Chestnut was the old post office building. Some of you may recall that. Look at what a grand building that was. They tore it down in 1944. That's what it looked like then. So why would they have demolished such a beautiful building like that? Why would they have done that back in the 1940s? They replaced it with a new post office there on Broadway and 6th. It's now called the Gene Snyder Courthouse building. And I was so interested in finding out why did they replace that beautiful building. I actually did an article for the Courier-Journal to find out more. And what actually happened was this was during World War II. And the government wanted all the metal out of this building. And I forget how many tons they took out, but it was a lot of steel that they took out, they reused for the war effort in the 1940s. So that's the reason why really they took it down, was to get to all the iron structure within it. So I guess it went for a noble purpose, if you will. Here's the beautiful Humana building that I used to work for. I worked for Humana back in the 1980s. And they replaced the Ollie's trolley that used to sit there. A little bit of an improvement, right? But actually, prior to Ollie's trolley, this building used to sit there. It was another bank building that was there. And my theory on historic preservation is, I don't mind you tearing down a beautiful landmark building, but replace it with another beautiful landmark building. Replace a landmark with a landmark. Let's don't devalue our community, devalue the tax base here as such. We're currently in the fight right now with the Omni Hotel downtown. They want to tear down a building called the Odd Fellows building, so you may be familiar with it. It's actually called Liberty Hall. It's right opposite the Pendennis Club there at 2nd and Muhammad Ali area. But the Omni wants to tear it down and just leave a vacant lot. It's a beautiful building. And it's been in use. It's not been deteriorated or decaying. It's been in use up until 2019. In all of its life, over 100 years, it's been in utilization. And so we horrible preservationists have filed a lawsuit to prevent Omni from doing that. But again, replace a landmark. Now, if Omni came back and said, hey, we're going to build this beautiful addition or whatever, okay, fine. But let's just don't leave another vacant. Do we have enough vacant lots in downtown Louisville, you think? So anyways, that's what we're up about, replace a landmark. I wrote an article about Humana building dedication. This was back in 1985 when they dedicated it. David Jones, Michael Graves, and Wendell Cherry depicted there, unveiling the name Humana. Not sure what's going to happen with the Humana building. Some of you may know it has some structural issues, and they'll probably repurpose it. Humana is vacating it next year. I think it would make a great hotel or residential building, perhaps. But we'll see what happens with that. Here's another building that they wanted to tear down. It was the old Taylor Drug Store there at 3rd and Market. And we were able to convince Marriott Corporation to save it there. It's now part of a restaurant, so you can see what we did. But they wanted to tear that down as well. And Marriott really fought us on this. They said, oh no, we can't save it, blah, blah, blah. And we did force them to save it. And now when you go on their website, that's the view that you see. They play up the historic preservation building that we saved. The old Kaufman Strauss building there on 4th Street is now part of 4th Street Live. Here's a view of Jefferson looking west from 3rd Street. You see City Hall there in the distance. That's what it looks like today, a little different. Here's 4th Street and Liberty looking, I think this is south from 4th and Liberty. That's what it looks like today. It's 4th Street Live. Here's an interesting photograph looking east on Broadway from 6th Street. So we're looking down Broadway to the east. Isn't that beautiful? So we went from that to that. Here's another view of Broadway looking east from 5th Street. That's what it looks like today. A friend sent me this photograph. I had never seen it before, and I said, oh, this is interesting. I see 2 churches there. I know of the one nearest to us. I'm familiar with that church, but I wasn't familiar with the church there in the distance, so I did some research. That's what that view looks like today. So they had torn down that other church building. So there's that photograph. Now, by the way, they also wanted to demo the old St. Paul's there at Brook and Broadway, and we horrible preservationists stopped them from doing that. But here's that Broadway Methodist Church that's there in that one photograph. So what happened to that? So they demolished it in the 1950s, replaced it with the Easter Seals building. Now it's the Norton Cancer Center. So to me, this represents what I talk about when you replace a landmark with a landmark. The Norton Cancer Center is a very beautiful building, especially on the interior. It's kind of a contemporary exterior. But they did replace a landmark with a landmark. And by the way, this church still exists. I've actually visited it in Asheville, North Carolina. The architect who did this church duplicated it in Asheville, North Carolina. And I visited it a few years ago, and that congregation did not know that the architect had duplicated their church and put it in Louisville. But anyways, so even though it was demolished here, it does exist in a physical form in Asheville, North Carolina, although with the current hurricane, I take it it's still there. I don't know what happened to it. And here's Broadway looking east from 2nd Street. You see a number of churches there. And so the only church that still remains is the old St. Paul Evangelical United Church of Christ that you see in color there in the upper right-hand corner. All the other churches have been demolished for one reason or another. The old Second Pres Church there at 2nd and Broadway, it was destroyed by a fire. But the congregation had already moved out over here to trying to think of that. Brownsboro Road and Chenoweth Lane. I was trying to think of Chenoweth, which is right out here. Chenoweth and Brownsboro Road. But they had already moved out, and it was a vacant church, and it burned down. Here at 4th and Broadway, they replaced that with Brown Hotel. Again, replacing a landmark with a landmark. Soldiers Confectionery was a very popular location, but J. Graham Brown built a beautiful hotel. Here's 4th and Guthrie. Then they turned the old Penny's department store into an office building. Now it looks like that. So I think they did a better job of this. That's a little bit more better architecture. Here's the old Stewart's department store. Everyone remembers Stewart's, I hope. And what is it now? Embassy Suites. I've actually stayed in the Embassy Suites there. They did a marvelous job, although I don't care for their CVS pharmacy there at the corner, but, you know. Bears fabric. Who remembers Bears? Oh, we love Bears fabric. My daughter, who went into textile design and ended up as a fashion designer in New York City, she lived in Bears fabric all the time. She always loved it. And unfortunately, what is it now? It's this. It was kind of demolished when they built out the expanded Spaghetti Junction, and I-65 kind of wiped it out there. But it's now part of Angel's Envy Distillery. Bacon and Sons, Bacon's department store. Here's one of the original locations of it, down on East Market Street opposite the McDonald's that's there on East Market. Then it got in really bad shape. Then they started to renovate it, and look at it now. So they brought it totally back. Look at this. And you know, I always hear politicians, council people, I'm always up against council people for whatever reason. They want to demolish any and everything. But they say, oh, you can't renovate those buildings, you can't bring them back, it costs too much. We have example after example of people doing that. Did a phenomenal job. Shopping, this is then, when you used to go downtown, the Bacons and Stewart's and Levy's and all. Now then, you used to go out to the suburbs too. Now how do you do shopping? Well, here's another shopping center, Iroquois Manor, what it looks like today. This is over there in the Highlands, shopping. It's now Starbucks. Bashford Manor, some of you may remember this. They demolished the old historic home and turned it into a mall. I never knew that Bashford Manor used to have a historic house on it. When I was growing up, I always thought it was a mall. But nowadays, we shop by Amazon. Muhammad Ali looking east from 7th Street. So this is the historic African American business district. It was just phenomenal. All of these stores along this district were owned by African Americans. Here's what we did to it. Parking lots, and just destroyed the entire thing. Here's a view looking south from Market Street along 9th Street. And by the way, that unknown church up there that I know, that's a Catholic church. That's the old Immaculate Conception Church. It was also called St. Mary's Catholic Church. This is what that view looks like today. Demolished all of that. And the Immaculate Conception, to my understanding, was not demolished, but it was very damaged during the 1937 flood, and one reason why they demolished it. View looking south from Broadway, so this is one view, this is what it looks like today. You like all the parking lots and everything?
No.
Yep. The Louisville clock. And we actually, I was part of the team that helped get it restored and back and operating. We had it going great. Then the city came along and said, well, we have something else there, we want to move it again. And so they took it away, and then they built Kindred Office Building Addition. So the Louisville clock is back in storage, and I doubt if it will ever come back out. The Castleman statue. So I've been involved with the Castleman statue since 2019, when the activists demanded it be taken down for various reasons. Oh, he was a racist, oh, he was a traitor, you name it. They threw every epithet against Castleman. All of it is untrue. Totally false what they said about Castleman. Yes, he served in the Confederate Army, was just a major, didn't impact the war whatsoever. He was a general in the U.S. Army. He served down in Puerto Rico during the Spanish-American War. He was a great friend of the African-American community. After his death, 19 very prominent African-American leaders of this community wrote a letter to the Courier-Journal praising Castleman for what he did for the African-Americans. Phenomenal. And yet today, that same community says he was a racist and a traitor. Right. He introduced Booker T. Washington when he came here to an all-black audience. Castleman was the only white person there. Came and introduced Booker T. Washington, and they got a round of applause. He saved African Americans from being lynched. Did you know we don't have any African Americans who were lynched in Jefferson County. And you know why? Because of Castleman. He got a Gatling gun, and he threatened any mob that attacked an African American by saying, okay, who wants to be first? You know, but that was Castleman. He was a very big, he did not segregate the parks like the activist said he did. He kept the parks integrated while he was alive. He was always segregated after he left after he died in 1924. So anyways, we're still fighting. This legal case has been up to the Kentucky Supreme Court. They ruled in our favor. They told Mayor Greenberg, put the Castleman back.
Good.
You took it down wrongly. Greenberg has ignored that ruling, and we have filed another lawsuit. It's going up through and then get to Kentucky Supreme Court. Hopefully in 2025 we'll get it reinstalled. We also want to do several other things. We want to also put up a civil rights statue adjacent to the Castleman for those 19 brave African American leaders who fought the Jim Crow laws back in that day. Jim Crow was this a horrible period in our history, and Castleman fought against that whole period. So anyways, totally wrong why they took him down, but we're fighting and putting him back up.
Good. Yay.
Another one that they took down was King Louis XVI, our namesake. And
I know.
this has a direct connection to our namesake, King Louis XVI of France. His daughter commissioned the statue, and unfortunately the activists did this to him, and the mayor had it removed, and we're still fighting to get this one put back up as well.
Good.
Here, okay, you're a little bit closer to home here. This is Shelbyville Road back in 1959.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, a lot of what you see there still exists. So here's what's there now. The bowling alley's there, the community center, the Baptist church, Shelbyville Road Plaza, Zachary Taylor. The Frisch's used to be there, and they just took out the Frisch's restaurant.
Carl.
Yeah. Don't get me started. I just wrote an article on that too about Mall St. Matthews and all that for the Courier-Journal. Here is the intersection of Frankfurt Avenue, Lexington Road, and Shelbyville Road. Yeah, it has the White Castle, has the billboards, has Gerstels.
Fine dining.
I didn't know Gerstels has been there for 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what it looks like today. Again, the White Castle is no longer, and the new White Castle is no longer there either. Gosh.
Yeah, it's gone.
Pryor's
There we
Steak.
go. Over St. Shelbyville Road.
Then it became a Arby's roast beef. And then it became this automobile dealership. By the way, the architect that designed this was a guy by the name of Norman Sweet. Y'all may not have heard of him. He's was a very famous architect in the 1950s and 60s here in Louisville. He lived just a few blocks from where we're seated today. Unfortunately, they've since tore down his contemporary home and put up a McMansion at that location. But anyways, Norm Sweet designed that along with a number of just beautiful residences around the Louisville area. This is on Chenoweth Lane, just down the street from us here. And then they did that to it. It's like, wow, it's just beautiful brick, that golden brick that they had on that. I loved it. And why would a plastic surgery center paint it white? I never understood that. The Vogue Theater. The Rialto Theater. And they tore it down. It was a surface parking lot for a number of years. Then they built a parking garage. Showcase Cinemas. It's now a Chick-fil-A and a Costco. There's going to the movies, from the theater district to the Showcase Cinemas to Tinseltown. Now, how do you view movies? Netflix. Miller's Restaurant, you may remember this downtown, near Christ Church Cathedral. They took it back, they took off the Miller's Edition, and now it's called the Howard Hardy House. I think it's an Airbnb downtown now, but they took it back to when it was built in the 1830s. The old Cunningham's Restaurant there at Breckenridge and 5th. It had a fire, as you can see. There you go. I used to go to Cunningham's, but I didn't realize all the other activity that used to go on there. Y'all may have heard some rumors about some of that. Yikes. White Castles, of course. That's the old St. Matthew's being demolished there. I don't care for the new concrete block when I like the old porcelain style. And I still see those around. I was just in Nashville not too long ago and saw a porcelain White Castle. The old Kingfish down the riverfront. It's now the Muhammad Ali Center. Fairground Stadium. They tore it down. It's now no longer there. The arenas, we used to go to the Armory, then it was called Louisville Gardens, then Freedom Hall, now Yum Arena. Lincoln Income Life, y'all may remember when they used to decorate it there with the Christmas symbolism and how it was built. It was built from the top down. It's a suspended building. You could literally walk underneath of it. Then they renamed it to the Caden Tower. Now it's called the Wright Tower, and it's kind of confusing because Frank Lloyd Wright did not design it. His successor firm, the Taliesin Associates, actually designed it. The only Frank Lloyd Wright building we've actually got in Louisville is the Ziegler House up there in Frankfurt. University of Louisville campus, it was once called the House of Refuge, there at 3rd and Eastern Parkway. That's what it looks like in the early 1960s, and in the upper right-hand corner there, you see the old Parkway Field. That's still there. Well, it was there. They demolished that in the early 1960s. There was the U of L campus in 1976. This is what it looks like today. It's come a long way since the House of Refuge. April 3rd, 1974. What it looks like now. Yeah. Hopefully they can do to Asheville, North Carolina, what they did here back in '74. The Cherokee Park with all the trees down. Hogan's Fountain and the teepee. That's what it is now. And of course the teepee is no longer with us either. They demolished that last year. The Olmsted Parks. Now we have the 21st Century Parks, now called the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. And I was involved with that. David Jones got me involved back in 2006. And by 2016, within 10 years, we had done this park and had it built. I remember going out there and just seeing just this landscape that was just all farmland and just, you name it. It was not what it is today. And see it transform within 10 years. It was just phenomenal. Cave Hill Cemetery, 1898. If you look at that monument there, that's what it looks like today. It's kind of filled in a little bit. Fontaine Ferry Park, not Fountain Ferry. We Louisvillians like to call it Fountain Ferry, but it's actually the Fontaine family actually had a ferry that went across the Ohio River at this point. But then they built the amusement park. Then it became the River Glen Park. That's what it looks like today. Locust Grove in 1922. You can see this little addition that was there. They've since taken it down, but you can see the shadow there on the facade of where it once was. The Louisville Times then, our afternoon newspaper. That's what it looks like today. Can you believe they ended that? I think it was on Valentine's Day, February the 14th, 1986, I think is when that ended. Oh. This is the Courier Journal. This is what it looks like today. Not quite what it used to be. Whiskey Row. Again, I was very much involved in this as well. The former previous mayor wanted to demolish all of this.
Oh, no.
Back in 2012, he wanted to take it all down.
Oh,
And we horrible preservationists said, over our dead bodies, we filed a lawsuit. And then they had a big fire. Boy, we were devastated when this happened. Here we go all this trouble to save it, then it burns up. But we were able to get it all restored, and now it is one of the top tourist attractions here in Louisville. This is what the skyline looked like in 1840. This is when Abraham Lincoln came here. He came here in 1841, and so this is what the city would have looked like when he was here. Then skyline in the 1890s, 1922, 100 years ago, 1940s, 1950s, 54, 59, 63, it's kind of changing a bit as you can see. 1970s. Who remembers the Ohio River freezing over 50 some odd years ago? Did anyone walk across it? Oh,
yeah.
I walked out.
walked out.
Didn't go all the way.
The skyline today. And again, if you're interested in any of the books, you can see me after it. Any questions on all that? There we go. Let's see what time we've got here. So I ran through those kind of quickly, knowing that we have to depart a little early. So any questions on any other memories that you might have had that I did not mention or want to elaborate on? Yes, up front.
I remember they took down the old waterworks building, or the water company building. They
Yeah.
all put that back together.
Yeah, yeah, they actually have that stored in a city warehouse over off 7th Street. I've actually seen all the stones, and I don't know, we'll see what happens. As part of, one of our negotiating things with Omni right now is to see if they would save the old Oddfellows building and rebuild that facade of the water company building adjacent to it and create sort of a residential complex there. So we're in negotiations with them on that now. We'll see if that happens. Yes?
The building on Barrett Avenue, 810 Barrett Avenue. What's the latest with that? Because I've worked.
Oh, you're talking about the Urban Government Center and all that?
What's the latest? What's going on?
Stay tuned. They haven't taken it down yet. We're still working on it. I know a lot of the residents in that area are not happy with the development. I attended all of the public hearings for the last 4 years, and I heard the residents talk that they wanted to save the green space, they wanted to repurpose the original part of the building. I heard what the residents wanted, but then when I go down to the council and hear the council say that they're just going to tear it all down and put up these massive parking garages and high-rise towers, I'm like going, that's not what the residents want. So we're in the midst of that right now. Stay tuned, you might hear something more about that in the next few weeks.
It was filled with mold.
Oh yeah, it's hazardous. All of these buildings, any building prior to the mid-1970s has hazardous material in it. They all have mold, they all have asbestos, they all have things, and guess what? We as architects can remediate that. In fact, before they tear down anything, they have to take all that stuff out anyways. They have to remediate it before, because you just cannot tear it all down and spread all that dust amongst us all. You've got to remediate it. So if we as taxpayers are going to pay $5 to $6 million to tear it down, shouldn't we get some benefit out of that money? Shouldn't we save the original part of it and repurpose that for affordable housing or something of that nature? So that's what, yeah, so whenever I hear the hazardous material argument is that every building, even, I'm not sure when your buildings were built here, but hopefully you've remediated it already. But Whiskey Row was filled with asbestos and mold and everything. We took it all out and repurposed it, and now look at what it is. We're used to doing that. We can do that. Other questions?
Oscar Manor.
Oh, Dosker Manor? Yeah, I don't know what to do about that. That's a whole different animal there. Yeah, they want to tear that down and put in a new residential complex. So I don't know. It's bad. It's unfortunate that our government systems allow that sort of deterioration to even happen. How did it even get to that point? And by the way, the Urban Government Center, as of 2020, was in great condition. You go look at it today, our government has allowed that to become dilapidated, deteriorated. They got graffiti all over it. If we as private citizens had a building and similar things happened to it, the government inspectors would be down on us in a minute, fining us, costing us money, telling us to clean it up. But here they're doing that over in the Highlands area, and those poor residents that have to suffer with all that. It's horrible. And we're going to work on it. We'll see what we can do to get them cleaned up. Yes?
Mr. Weiser, when you showed the Courier Journal in the Louisville Times, Bingham's actually published 3 editions at that time. They published a Red Flash, which had the stock market closings. Now we get a paper, printed.
It'll be an email, yeah. Well, anyways, you're right. They produced a number of editions back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'll go ahead and shut this down. I know we